Every lie leaves a trace. Every betrayal leaves a mark, and sometimes the person who believed they had escaped the truth eventually discovers that the truth was simply waiting for the right moment to return. You may think the story ended when the lie was exposed. You may think the relationship ended when trust was broken. You may even believe the person who betrayed you walked away untouched.
But betrayal rarely ends, it is discovered. Something continues beneath the surface. A question that never received an honest answer.
A memory that keeps returning.
A trust that suddenly feels fragile.
A person who begins questioning their own judgment. And somewhere on the other side, the person responsible may continue living as though nothing happened. That is where the deeper story begins. Because coming back full circle is rarely about revenge.
It is about consequences. It is about understanding how choices can create emotional effects long after the original event has disappeared from view.
Research into trust repair shows that betrayal can damage the basic sense of safety people depend on in close relationships, while rebuilding trust requires more than a simple apology. Accountability, transparency, remorse, communication, and consistent behavior. Truth.
That's through some future relationship.
Single experience can make someone question words they once accepted without hesitation. A promise may suddenly require proof. Silence may feel different. Affection may be examined more carefully. The betrayal ends, yet its psychological echo can remain. But there is another side to this story that deserves attention. People who deceive others often focus on escaping the immediate consequence. They think about getting caught, being confronted, losing the relationship, or protecting their image. They may fail to recognize a deeper consequence. Once trust has been damaged, control over the other person's perception is lost. The person who was hurt begins seeing patterns that were previously invisible. Small contradictions become meaningful. Old conversations take on a different meaning. Moments that once seemed harmless can suddenly reveal the truth. And slowly, the person who was betrayed begins putting the pieces together. That is when the story can begin moving in an unexpected direction, because the greatest consequence may have little to do with punishment. It may come through recognition. One day, the person who caused the damage may realize that they lost access to someone who genuinely cared. They may remember the patience they received, the chances they were given, and the trust they treated casually. They may finally understand that an apology cannot automatically restore what repeated choices destroyed. By then, the person they hurt may have already changed. In this video, you will learn why betrayal creates such powerful psychological consequences, why certain lies continue affecting relationships long after they are exposed, why people sometimes forces them to face it, and what coming full circle truly means from a psychological and emotional perspective. You will also discover why forgiveness does not require restored access, why healing does not depend on seeing someone punished, and why the strongest ending can be the moment you stop allowing another person's choices to define your future. Stay
May change the way you understand closure.
The real full circle moment may have far less to do with the person who betrayed you and far more to do with the person you become after surviving it. Welcome to our channel, where we explore psychology, emotional healing, human behavior, and the hidden patterns behind relationships. If you value deeper understanding and honest conversations about the experiences that shape us, subscribe to the channel and join us. Because sometimes the truth returns quietly, and when it does, it reveals something far more powerful than revenge: freedom. A lie can look small when it begins. It may appear like a simple omission, a hidden conversation, a changed detail, or a truth that someone decided you did not need to know. In that moment, the person telling the lie may believe they are protecting themselves from conflict, protecting their image, or simply buying more time. But psychologically, deception can change something much deeper than the facts surrounding one event. It can change the foundation of trust. Trust gives people a sense of emotional safety.
You can relax. You do not have to examine every word. You do not have to search for hidden meanings.
You can accept their explanations because you believe the person speaking to you has your best interests in mind. But once that trust is damaged, the mind can begin looking backward. The discovery of one hidden truth can suddenly make old memories feel different. A conversation that once seemed ordinary may suddenly feel suspicious. A moment that seemed harmless may begin carrying a completely different meaning. Questions start appearing. What else did I miss? Was everything they told me true? How long were they hiding this? Was I trusting someone who already knew they were deceiving me? This is why betrayal can become much larger than the original lie. The painful part is often not simply discovering what happened. It is realizing that your understanding of reality was being shaped by information another person deliberately withheld. You were making decisions based on a version of the truth that they controlled. You trusted their words, while they possessed information that could have changed your choices. Research on trust repair shows that betrayal can disrupt the basic expectations people hold within close relationships, making emotional safety much harder to maintain. Once that sense of safety is disturbed, trust cannot simply return because someone says, "I am sorry." The mind remembers the contradiction, the heart remembers the shock, and slowly, the person who was betrayed begins questioning the foundation on which the relationship was built. The lie may have lasted for minutes, days, or years, but its discovery can force someone to reconsider an entire chapter of their life. Betrayal rarely stays inside the moment when it happens. One broken promise, one hidden truth, or one act of deception can create consequences that slowly spread through the entire relationship. After trust has been damaged, the betrayed person may begin paying closer attention to things that once felt ordinary. A simple change in tone can raise questions. A response can feel different. A vague explanation may create doubt where there was once complete trust. This does not mean the person has become weak or overly suspicious. Their mind is trying to understand whether emotional safety still exists. Trust allows people to feel secure enough to stop constantly evaluating the relationship. Betrayal can interrupt that sense of security and make the person more alert to possible signs of danger. Over time, this can affect the way they communicate, connect, and respond to closeness. They may become quieter. They may hold back personal feelings. They may stop asking for reassurance because they fear receiving another answer that cannot be trusted. Some people become emotionally distant because distance feels safer than vulnerability. Others become highly attentive to small changes in behavior because they are trying to prevent themselves from being surprised again. Research into betrayal trauma has found important associations between experiences of partner betrayal, trust, attachment patterns, and self-esteem. These connections help explain why the impact of betrayal can reach beyond the relationship itself. A person may begin wondering whether their judgment can be trusted. They may question why they did not notice certain signs earlier. They may even turn the blame inward and wonder whether they somehow caused the betrayal. Yet betrayal does not automatically leave permanent damage. People respond differently, and healing remains possible. With time, honest reflection, supportive relationships, healthy boundaries, and consistent experiences of safety, a person can rebuild trust in themselves and in others. The goal is not to become someone who expects betrayal everywhere. The goal is to become someone who recognizes unhealthy patterns without allowing an old wound to control every new relationship. The person begins healing, something important starts to change. They become less focused on understanding every detail of the betrayal and more focused on understanding what they need in order to feel safe again. Some people confuse escaping an immediate confrontation with escaping the consequences of what they have done. Once the argument ends, the relationship becomes quiet,
or the other person decides to stop asking questions.
they may begin believing the situation is over,
They may tell themselves that the person still loves them,
that forgiveness means everything has been repaired, or that moving forward means the past has disappeared. This is where avoidance can become psychologically powerful. A person may avoid an uncomfortable conversation because facing the truth would force them to experience guilt, shame, fear, or responsibility.
They may change the subject when difficult questions arise.
They may minimize what happened, leave out important details, blame circumstances, or place responsibility on the person they hurt. These strategies can create temporary relief because the uncomfortable emotion is pushed away. But avoiding accountability does not automatically repair the emotional damage. The other person still has their own internal experience. They may stop feeling safe, they may become quieter, they may begin questioning the relationship and their own judgment. The person who caused the betrayal cannot control what happens inside someone else's mind after trust has been broken. They cannot decide how quickly another person should heal. They cannot erase the memories created by their choices simply because they have stopped talking about them. This is where the deeper consequence begins. The person who betrayed you may eventually forget the exact conversation, the date, or the details surrounding the event. You may remember something very different. You may remember how easily you trusted them before the betrayal. You may remember the moment your confidence changed. You may remember realizing that words could sound sincere while hiding something completely different underneath. That experience can influence how you approach relationships afterward. You may listen more carefully. You may notice inconsistencies sooner. You may become more protective of your emotional boundaries. The betrayal becomes more than something that happened in the past. It becomes an experience on trust, honesty, and emotional safety. Coming full circle begins when reality starts confronting the person who created the damage. But reality does not always arrive through some dramatic event. Sometimes it arrives quietly. A person may lose access to someone who genuinely loved them and only later understand how rare that kind of loyalty was. They may receive an apology but still realize that trust cannot be rebuilt through words alone. They may enter another relationship expecting a fresh beginning, only to notice the same emotional patterns appearing again, the same distance, the same dishonesty, the same avoidance of difficult conversations, the same inability to take responsibility when their actions hurt someone. This is one of the lesser understood forms of consequence. People often expect consequences to look like public failure, rejection, or obvious suffering, yet some consequences happen privately. They can appear as emotional emptiness, repeated relationship problems, regret, or the realization that a person once can replace a relationship, but replacing a person does not automatically replace the emotional connection they once had. Sometimes they begin remembering small things they previously ignored, the patience they received, the trust they were given, the chances they were offered, the way someone stayed even when leaving would have been easier. Then they begin understanding that the relationship did not disappear because of one isolated moment. It changed because repeated choices slowly weakened the foundation. In other situations, a person may eventually experience behavior that resembles the behavior they once gave to someone else. They may suddenly understand how confusing silence can feel, how painful dishonesty can become, or how deeply rejection can affect someone who trusted them. Yet the most powerful consequence can be simpler than all of this. They may realize that the person they hurt has continued living without them. That person healed. Their priorities changed. Their boundaries became stronger, their life moved forward, and there is a painful truth in that kind of growth. Some people only understand the value of what they had after they no longer have access to it. By then, the door may still exist, but the person standing on the other side may have become someone who no longer needs to open it. Betrayal can change the emotional rules of a relationship in ways that are difficult to reverse. Before trust is broken, words may be enough. A promise can feel reassuring because there is no reason to search for another meaning behind it. After betrayal,
Words can begin requiring evidence.
a simple trust me may carry very little comfort when it's already been damaged. Before betrayal, silence may have felt peaceful because it carried no hidden meaning. After betrayal, silence can create questions. A delayed response may lead the mind toward possibilities that would have never existed before the deception. Before betrayal, love may have felt safe and natural. After betrayal, even genuine affection can sometimes require reassurance because the person that emotional closeness does not automatically guarantee honesty. This is why rebuilding trust requires much more than an apology. An apology can acknowledge the pain, but it cannot erase the experience that created it. The person who was hurt may need to see accountability in action. They may need transparency instead of secrecy, honest communication instead of defensive, and consistent behavior instead of temporary promises. A 2025 systematic review examining trust repair highlighted themes such as transparency, accountability, remorse, communication, shared experiences, and explanations surrounding the betrayal as important parts of rebuilding trust. These elements matter because trust is built through repeated experiences. A person learns that it is safe to believe again when someone's behavior repeatedly matches their words. This process takes time. One's sincere conversations can be meaningful, but consistency is what gives that conversation weight.
The person who was betrayed may also become more aware of their own boundaries.
Recognizing that forgiveness and trust are separate experiences. They can forgive someone while still requiring healthier behavior before allowing emotional closeness again. They can care about someone while refusing to ignore warning signs. They can accept an apology while still remembering what happened. An apology can open the door to healing, but consistent behavior is what rebuilds trust. And when someone understands this, they begin to realize that the goal is not to return to the person they were before the betrayal. The goal becomes creating a strong sense of safety where love can exist alongside honesty, boundaries, and self-respect. Sometimes a person only recognizes the value of someone after that person is no longer available in the same way. While the relationship was still present, they may have treated patience as something guaranteed. They may have accepted loyalty without appreciating what it required. They may have received emotional support while giving very little in return. They may have been offered chances after mistakes and interpreted forgiveness as permission to continue the same behavior. Then something changes. The person they once expected to remain becomes distant. The conversations become fewer. The emotional access disappears. Suddenly, memories that once felt ordinary can become meaningful. They may remember someone who listened when nobody else did. They may remember the patience they received during difficult moments. They may remember the opportunities to tell the truth before the truth was discovered another way. They may remember the forgiveness they once treated casually. This does not mean every person who betrays someone will eventually feel regret, and it would be unfair to promise that every betrayer will suffer some dramatic consequence. Human beings respond to their actions in different ways. Some reflect deeply, some avoid responsibility, some recognize their mistakes only after significant time has passed. Others may never fully understand the damage they created, yet consequences can create moments of reflection. When the distractions disappear and the relationship is truly gone, a person can begin seeing their past choices with greater clarity. They may realize that the person they lost was not simply a partner, friend, or source of emotional support. They may realize they lost someone who had trusted them deeply. And sometimes that realization arrives after the other person has already changed. The person who once waited for answers may have stopped asking. The person who wanted an apology may have healed without receiving one. The person who once needed an explanation may now understand that their peace does not depend on hearing it. That is where the transformation becomes powerful. The focus slowly moves away from whether the betrayer finally understands and toward whether the betrayed person still needs them to understand. Because there comes a point where closure is no longer something another person can give you. It becomes something you create by accepting what happened, learning from it, and choosing where your life goes next. Forgiveness is often misunderstood, especially after a deep betrayal. People sometimes believe that forgiving someone means trusting them again, accepting their behavior, or allowing them to return to the same place in your life. These are separate choices. You can forgive someone and still decide that the relationship cannot continue. You can understand why a person behaved the way they did without excusing the harm their choices created. You can release anger without handing that person access to your emotions again. Research on forgiveness after interpersonal transgressions suggests that trust plays an important role in the relationship between emotional closeness and forgiveness. This helps explain why forgiveness can become complicated when trust has been damaged. When someone has broken your trusts, forgiveness does not require you to pretend the betrayal never happened. It does not require you to erase the memory, dismiss the warning signs, or convince yourself that everything is safe again. Forgiveness can simply mean that you refuse to carry the anger forever. You stop allowing the person's choices to occupy your mind every day. You stop waiting for them to become the person you needed them to be. You do them well while choosing a completely different direction for your own life. This distinction becomes especially important when someone returns after hurting you. Their return does not automatically mean the relationship deserves another chance. Words express regret, but your boundaries can still remain firm. Trust has to be earned through behavior, consistency, and accountability. You are allowed to recognize someone's humanity without reopening a door that caused you pain. You are allowed to care without returning. You are allowed to forgive without forgetting what the experience taught you. And sometimes the deepest form of closure arrives quietly. It is the moment you realize that you are no longer waiting for the perfect explanation. You no longer need them to admit every detail. You no longer need an apology before you can move forward. Sometimes closure is not an apology. Sometimes closure is the moment you realize you no longer need one. The real full circle moment begins when the story stops being about what the other person did and starts becoming about what you choose to do with what happened. At first, the betrayed person may spend countless hours searching for an explanation. Why did they lie? Why did they hide it? Why did they make those choices after knowing how deeply I cared? Those questions can feel to escape because the mind wants a clear reason for something that caused so much pain. But healing can slowly change the questions. Instead of asking why someone hurt you, you may begin asking why their choices should have the power to define the way you see yourself. That shift is significant. Their dishonesty was a reflection of their decisions. Their betrayal was a reflection of their character and circumstances. It was never a measurement of your worth. Yet when someone betrays you, it can become easy to absorb their behavior as a statement about yourself. You may begin thinking you were too trusting, too forgiving, too emotional, or somehow deserving of what happened. Then a deeper awareness begins to develop. You realize that trusting someone was not a character flaw. Caring deeply was not a weakness. Giving someone an opportunity was a choice you made with the information and feelings you had at that time. their decision to use that trust belongs to them. This is where the emotional power begins to shift. You stop waiting for them to validate your pain. You stop measuring your healing by whether they regret their actions. You stop wondering whether they will eventually understand what they lost. Their choices remain part of the past, but they no longer have to control the direction of your future. They made their choices. You get to make yours. You can choose stronger boundaries. You can choose healthier relationships. You can choose to trust your instincts again. You can choose peace without needing anyone else to suffer. And perhaps that is the deepest meaning of coming full circle. It is not watching someone receive the pain they caused. It is reaching a place where what they did no longer determines who you become. Betrayal can create a powerful desire to see the person who caused the pain suffer in return. After being lied to, manipulated, or deeply disappointed, it can feel natural to want them to experience the same emotions they created in you. You may want them to regret everything. You may wonder whether their new relationship is failing.
You may check their life from a distance.
Looking for signs that they finally understand what they lost. Yet something important can happen without you realizing it. The more attention you give to their punishment, the more space they continue occupying inside your mind. They may be physically absent from your life while remaining psychologically present in your thoughts. Their behavior still determines your mood. Their choices still influence your emotions. Their regret still becomes something you wait for. That is a difficult place to heal from because your freedom remains connected to someone else's actions. Strength begins to look different when you stop requiring revenge to feel restored. You can acknowledge the damage without allowing bitterness to become your identity. You can recognize that someone treated you unfairly while refusing to let their behavior convince you that the entire world is unsafe. You can become more careful without becoming cold. You can develop stronger boundaries without building walls around your heart. You can remember what happened without reliving it every day. This does not mean pretending the betrayal was acceptable. It means refusing to give the betrayal a permanent role in your future. Your healing does not need to depend on their punishment. Your peace does not need to depend on their regret. Your future does not need to depend on whether they finally understand what they did. There may come a point where you realize that the greatest response is simply living differently. You choose people who communicate honestly. You pay attention to consistency. You trust your instincts. You protect your emotional energy. You stop chasing explanations from someone who repeatedly refused to give them. And slowly, the person who once occupied so much of your emotional world becomes a smaller part of your story. The betrayal remains something you experienced, but it no longer has to become something you carry. The person who betrayed you controlled their choices, their lies, their decisions, and the way they treated the trust you placed in them. But they do not control what you become afterward. That part belongs to you. In the beginning, betrayal can make you feel as though someone else has taken control of your emotional world. Their actions may determine what you think about yourself, what you expect from relationships, and how safe you feel opening your heart again. But healing slowly gives that control back to you. You begin rebuilding trust in yourself, not by becoming perfect at reading people, but by learning that you can respond to difficult situations with greater awareness. You begin recognizing patterns earlier. You notice when someone's words consistently conflict with their behavior. You become more comfortable saying no when something feels wrong. You stop believing that setting a boundary makes you difficult or uncaring. You also stop feeling responsible for convincing someone to treat you with basic honesty and respect. Healthy relationships should not require you to constantly prove why your feelings matter. They should create enough safety for honesty to exist without fear. This does not mean you will never experience disappointment again. It means You become better equipped to recognize what deserves your energy and what deserves distance. You learn that someone else's inability to value you does not reduce your value. Their dishonesty does not make you foolish for having trusted them. Their betrayal does not become your identity. Slowly, the story begins changing. At first, the story is about what they did. Then it becomes about how deeply it hurt. Eventually, it becomes about what you learned from surviving it. You may become more selective with your trust, more protective of your peace, and more honest about what you will accept in your relationships. You may discover that strength is not becoming emotionally unreachable. Strength is being able to remain open while also knowing where your boundaries stand. The person who betrayed you made choices that shaped the past, but they do not get to write the rest of your story. The story stops being about what they did to you and starts becoming about who you became after it. Every lie leaves something behind. Every betrayal creates consequences. Every broken promise becomes part of a story that cannot simply be erased. But coming full circle does not always mean watching the person who hurt you fall. Sometimes it means watching yourself rise. They may eventually understand what they lost. They may regret what they did. They may remember the patience you gave, the chances you offered, and the trust you placed in them. They may one day realize that they walked away from someone who genuinely cared. But you do not have to wait for that moment. You do not have to spend your life watching for their regret. You do not have to make their realization the condition for your peace, because the deepest form of closure begins when you realize that your life continued without the answer you once needed. You healed, you learned, you became more aware, you discovered stronger boundaries. You learned to recognize patterns that once confused you. Most importantly, you stopped allowing someone else's betrayal to determine your value. The person who betrayed you may eventually have to face their choices. They may have to live with memories that cannot be changed and consequences they cannot control. But you have something far more important to face: your future, the life that still belongs to you, the relationships that can still be healthy, the peace that can still be yours, the version of yourself that exists beyond this painful chapter. And perhaps that is the real meaning of coming full circle. It is not that they finally suffered. It is not that they finally apologized. It is not even that they finally understood. It is that you finally reached a place where their lies no longer have the power to control your peace. Their choices remain theirs. Your future remains yours. Every lie, every betrayal, every broken promise eventually becomes part of the past. And you keep moving forward. You stop carrying what someone else chose to place on your heart.
You stop waiting for another person to give you permission to heal.
You stop measuring your worth by how someone treated you. You understand that being betrayed did not make you less valuable. It simply revealed something about the person who chose to betray your trust. So, if this message spoke to something you have experienced, let this be your reminder. Your story does not end with what someone did to you. It continues with what you choose to become afterward. If you found value in this video, take a moment to like it. Share your thoughts in the comments, because your experience may help someone else who is still trying to understand their own pain. And subscribe to our channel for more psychology, emotional healing, self-awareness, and deeper relationship insights. Because sometimes the greatest comeback
Is not making someone regret losing you.
it is becoming someone who no longer needs them to.